All right, we are live. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Let's see who is in here today. So we have.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Got like 16 people now. It's probably going to grow a little bit, maybe not.
I'm present, Chris.
How was that? Sorry.
I'm present, Chris. I'm present.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm counting the counting the numbers here. Awesome, guys. Yeah, I already saw some of your posts on our group. So if I missed with the comment, I'm gonna be doing this right after the class. So I'm gonna be commenting on it, and some of you guys already commented on the work, and makes me really happy to see. It's like how you're progressing with some lighting experiments already, and really cool. And there's a lot of very promising work already. It's like from the get-go. So that's pretty awesome. And we're gonna keep pushing. It's like I said, we're gonna establish a little scene. And then from that scene, we're gonna be basically, it's like going and iterating on it, right? Like make it better and better. That's the intention. So let me share my screen here. And before I start, I'm gonna tell you guys that today's probably gonna be the most boring day of all of them, because I'm gonna be just projecting this head into my current topology. And the thing is, like, there is a plugin. Let me show you this. A lot of you guys already know it, but if you never heard of it, I can just bring this one up, and I can just do like a Z-Wrap like that. So Z-Wrap by the Russian 3D scanner. All right, so we're gonna do this. And it's a pretty cool plugin, but the thing is, like, it's paid, right? And I don't know if you're gonna go. It's like I don't know how often you use this kind of stuff. For example, like if you're gonna do a lot of portraits constantly, right? You might invest it, or if you do this professionally, you're like, you need to do this. I think for a company would be really good, but for us, I don't know, man. I do this like once a month, and it takes me about an hour. So it's not like I'm investing into a new software, But this thing is actually pretty powerful. They have like the indie version here that's $99 per year, which is like the Z-Wrap for ZBrush. And then professional, $249. And students, I guess like he has a free for students at universities and schools. Maybe I can ask them if they can send me a copy or something, And since you're students, you might be able to do that as well. But yeah, it looks pretty cool. I mean, like if you go to this website, you just like watch one of the videos they have in the front page, and it's quite amazing. It's like it looks like a voodoo. It's kind of like it snaps everything for you and transfers map. Does all kinds of stuff. But since we don't have it, and in this case here, if most of you guys don't have it, we're gonna be doing manually, just like in the old days, because I am an old person, so I'm gonna be doing that. And then hopefully going to be able to bring it back to Maya at the end, if I can finish in the session, and then maybe like keep going with the render stuff. I can do one thing today. I don't know if it's a good idea to do today, because we don't have all the maps painted, or any maps painted at this point to plug and to start like establishing the shader network. But I think with the previous classes, I actually did like just a mini tutorial about like the beginning of like the subsurface scattering in Arlo, just an introduction. So if you have time for that, I'm gonna do this. So at least like during the weekend, you can play a little bit with that. But if I don't, then we're gonna have to stick with the plan, and then starting next week is when things start ramping up. So basically, like the first week starts quite slow, and then ends kind of like in this this class that's today. That's just like the projection. Which is the boring part, but then it's a necessary step, because like next week you're gonna have this model ready to go for HD geometry, and then things really start picking up. It's like you're gonna get a lot of information starting next week, and then if you're trying to follow the class, like it's like keep up with it, you're gonna have plenty of work next week. And then the week after that, then we're gonna be talking about more stuff, like there's texturing, painting, and everything. It's going to be very busy for you guys in the next 2 weeks. And then the last week, it gets a little bit slower again. So like I would say like the first day and the last week is still pretty fast. And then the last 3 days, it's kind of like slows down a little bit. So it all depends on how much we're going to be able to do, you know, within the times of the classes. But, you know, it's like if I have some free time right at the end, then we can use for basically like anything, like any questions you might have. If you want to reinforce something, you know, it's like I can just repeat, do mini tutorials, things like that. But basically like the entire content, I would say like it's about like 3 weeks and 2 days, something like that. And then there's like 2 days normally at the end that are kind of like a little bit more free, you know, it's like for us to talk about stuff and get all this stuff done. The thing is like I'm gonna be feeding all this content to you guys, and then a lot of that's gonna be like, okay, I get it how it works, but now I'm gonna have to spend this huge amount of time on my spare time to be able to complete that, right? Because for example, if I'm sculpting pores, I'm gonna be sculpting during class, showing exactly how I do it, but then the work I'm gonna have to do like during the weekend. That's the time I have to do that. And to cover entire face with pores, if you're doing manually, like one by one, I would say like it's gonna take between 7 and 8 hours just to cover the entire face. But there is a cheat that we can use, which is basically like building a little array of pores that we can actually use as a stamp, you know, so I can save time by doing it that way. So that can save a good chunk of time. Still like a couple of hours in for sure, like to cover the entire face with pores. But we're gonna be dealing with this next week, so not this week. This week we're gonna just wrap up what we have, which is like I said, the boring part, right? So like I said, I have this head that I use for the other characters, like I use for Giger, Michelangelo, you know, it's like all those other guys, like Stan Winston, Ray Harryhausen, every single one of them share the same bust. So I'm gonna be bringing that one, which is not like a perfect topology, but at least I know it works. You know, it's like the pores look nice and everything, and it's not super heavy. It's like 72 million polygons. Sometimes I miss a little bit of polygons. You know, it's like I would say between 80 and 100 million for a head and the shoulders. I think it's easier to get the detail quite sharp. You know. And then you might be thinking, okay, so how do I calculate my base mesh, right? So the way you calculate your base mesh, like how many polygons you're gonna need, is basically like the opposite of what we did to calculate the how many UDIMs you needed, right? We calculated one of the first classes. But let's say if you start with a number, like a magic number, let's say 90 million polygons, right? And then you want to get to you want to establish like the topology for your base mesh, right? I saw some of you guys already start working with some base meshes. So for example, if I start with 90 million polygons, I'm going to divide by 4 a couple of times or many times. So divided by 4, divided by 4, divided by 4, divided by 4, divided by 4. So at this point here, I got to 87,000 polys, basically like 88,000 polys. So if you have a mesh that's around this poly count, you're good to go. If you want to go even lower, so you can go either 88,000 or, you know, it's like 22,000, right? So if you manage to get your base mesh for the shoulders and head around those numbers, you know, either 22 million or 88 million, 22,000 or 88,000 polygons, you're going to be in a ballpark to subdivide this mesh and to get to close to 90 million polygons when you subdivide many times, right? So that's basically how you calculate based on the ideal number at the end. And like I said, like an ideal number for head and shoulders, in my opinion, is about between 80 and 100 million. You should be able to cover and have like pore detail mostly everywhere, right? Sometimes, I mean, like you might think that sometimes when you're applying the little pore detail in there in the HD, the pore itself doesn't look super sharp or anything like that. But just remember that the settings that I'm going to be passing to you guys from ZBrush, it's going to take care of like smoothing a lot of that. So it's not like you're going to get like you know, it's like a faceted polygons. You're going to be using like the DP subpix here, like cranked all the way to 4. So you should smooth out your displacement, you know. So it's not like you're going to get stuff like pixelated at the end. You're going to get like a smooth map. And so nothing to worry too much about if you still see a little bit of polygons in your pores, right? Because think about that, right? Like we are zooming in like into something like this to be able to see the pores. And the subsurface is going to smooth them out anyway. You're going to lose a lot of detail because of the scattering. So So let's start with this. This is my base mesh right now. And like I said before, the idea for me is to start like I started this model, which is like with a primitive instead of starting with a base mesh, because I can avoid contamination, right? So all the forms in here came from nothing, and then it's not contaminated with something that was already baked in another mesh. But for the purpose of like going faster, in the previous two classes, I actually used the base mesh. You just have to go to town and not be like precious about preserving things, right? You just go to town and change everything. And if you manage to do that, then you can totally use the base mesh, you know. But this one was kind of like, okay, because people didn't see me sculpting from a base mesh, that's what I'm gonna do now. So that's a little mini challenge for myself, I would say. So the way I'm gonna deal with this now, I already know that's the world scale, right? And we spoke about the world scale yesterday, size of the eyes and all that stuff. And it's important to use world scale because we want to make sure that, for example, like if you're reading a paper on subsurface scattering or something, you know, and scientists, they are talking about like real world stuff. They're not talking about like, okay, it's let's talk about the miniature version of this character, right? They're going to be talking about the skin itself. So it's good that we can actually use those numbers to actually, you know, it's like to put them down and actually have like more realistic results if you want to go that way. In my case, I use a lot of freedom when it comes to all the technical stuff, you know. You're going to see me be very technical about certain things, but some other things I just like, it's my style, you know. For example, like I see a render and then sometimes I go and I add a little bit more subsurface than what I think it would be in a real person, right? Just because I like that little extra flashiness to it. And same with lighting, you know, it's like sometimes I'm gonna crank the lighting higher than you would be like from the HDRI itself. And it's all a matter of like, you know, it's like keeping your style. I think that's what this class offers a lot. For example, instead of like using just like ready-made pores and stuff from Texture XYZ, for example, right? Which, by the way, it's an amazing product. And I don't use in this class here, but I'm not going to stop you guys from using it. I've seen some students doing a combination of the texturing XYZ combined with this pore detail by hand that I teach in the class, right? And I think for me, it's if I do things by hand, there's a huge room for style in there, right? So for example, if I'm just placing those textures and everything from texturing XYZ, I'm controlling the way I'm placing and everything. But at the end of the day, it's going to be the same as another like 20, 100 artists did, right? Like, for example, like there's just like so many packages you can get from them, right? So, but if you have your own style, for example, like if you sculpt your own pore by hand, that's your work already. That's a sculpture you created. And then you're going to create an alpha from that, right? And then from that, you're going to create an array of alphas and create a brush from that. And that's all your creation, you know. It's like it's cool because you feel like, okay, I'm building this whole thing from scratch, and it's a fulfilling kind of thing first. And another thing is that you know, like I said, for example, you get a scan sometimes that's pretty dirty, and then you know, it's like how can you contribute for that? You know, it's like maybe you can get sharper detail, right? Sometimes the scan is not that sharp, and you can actually come up with little details you can help to actually improve that. So I think that's the cool thing about this class, you know, it's like it really, everything is a more like artistic approach, I would say. So things I just like, they are mostly idealized. It's not like I keep things like perfect according to the book, right? I came up with my own interpretation of what a pore is. If you look at the microscope, the pore is not exactly what I sculpt, but the pore that I sculpt is like something that I can see it, you know, it's like applying the whole face. And it looks like a realistic thing. So that's my interpretation of it. You guys can come up with your own interpretations of the pore based on my idea, for example. But at the end of the day, because you're going to be sculpting it, that's your own style. And when you put all this collection of styles, you know, things, layers of styles, at the end, the piece you're going to create is unique. You know, it's like it's going to have a lot of the techniques I'm using. For example, this subsurface scattering setting is probably going to be either the same or very similar to what I use because I'm going to be sharing all the settings, right? But in terms of the construction of everything, it's going to be your own. And I think that's a very important distinction, you know. So let's go back here and I'm going to start this thing. So I'm going to import my base mesh from Ray, which is a very different model from this one. So I'm going to click my star here, Polymesh 3D. And I'm gonna click import. And I'm gonna go to Ray. Right. Oops. Right here. And let's go to the OBJ. Let's see what's the latest I saved here, which would be this one here, low res 25. That's the little guy in there. So that's just a base mesh. And I'm gonna click this one here, my current model. And I'm gonna just append it. Append this guy. And it's in a different position already. So first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna move it. So you're just gonna turn off my perspective, or P if you want to do a shortcut, and make sure that everything is, it's like this, it's frozen. So I'm gonna just press Alt, then click this little guy here just to reset the orientation, just make sure it's completely flat. And then if you want to make sure it's centered with the selection, right? So you just click this little guy here. If you have a mirror on, for example, if you press X, right? So now you have mirror. If you try to do that, press Alt and click this one, it's gonna go to one of the sides. So it's not gonna go to the middle of the object. So if you're in the middle of the object, just press X to turn off symmetry, and then click this one again, it goes kind of in the middle. So I'm gonna just move this one down, and I'm gonna get close enough to it. And obviously I'm gonna have to do everything manually here. Let's do like scale. I think the eyes are almost spot on. So I'm just gonna make sure to have the eyelids as close as possible. And from that point, I'm gonna just brute force everything. So let's get the eyelids close enough, like I think around there. And then let's make sure that we have this model symmetrical. So you're just gonna turn off everything here. And you're gonna notice that this model is asymmetrical, right? His nose is already asymmetrical. So the first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna start with, let's save morph target for now. And then let's use under deformation, you can go to smart symmetry. Just click that one. So it's gonna see the line in the middle problem is not gonna work very well because it's very, it's not very close to the middle area, the middle, yeah. So it's gonna probably look a little crooked. So let's try symmetry. Yeah, you see like this one here already is out of place, right? It's kind of like goes like that. It always happens like that because ZBrush doesn't do it based on the topology itself, right? So I'm gonna turn on symmetry with X, and then my intensity here, I'm using very little intensity because I'm using the smooth stronger right there, right? And the smooth stronger you can find in Lightbox. If you go to brush and then smooth, and if you can go here, you have like all those type of smooth brushes here. So if you press shift and click one of them, so for example, it's stronger, now this is assigned to your shift, right? So you replace the default one. And this is a good one if you have it at 100%, for example, because if you're trying to eliminate detail from the HD geometry, this one is gonna do the job a little faster, But at the same time, now we're gonna have to use very low intensity to make sure that you're smoothing in a subtle way, right? You're just gonna smooth it out here, right in the middle, just to get that line a little bit closer to the middle. And this one here too. And because we save our morph target in there, we should be able to do that little trick that Omid actually was teaching us last time. So if you go here just to project morph, right? It basically like it goes back to the center. So the line should be closer to the center. So now if I do again deformation, let's see if I can smart resim. So the line is closer to the middle, right? So that's a good one. So smart resim again, yeah, it's not doing anything too different now. So that should be a good starting point for me. I'm just gonna turn off the color. So just click this little brush here, boom. And then let's start doing a little bit of conforming this mesh as, the closest I can. And try to go for the bigger areas first for the projection. But I'm gonna start with, just conforming things very roughly here. So the symmetry is on. And I wanna make sure at the end, before I do any projection, that my edge flow is actually pretty good. And it's actually conforming nicely to her surface of her face. So I'm gonna start with the ears here, just bringing it in. And you see, like, I don't have the back of her ears or anything like that. I'm gonna start like just projecting whatever I can in the front in here. But then the back of the ear, because I already have this model, I can just ignore completely and just like not project at all. But I wanna make sure that the external part here is actually pretty close to the surface of her ear. Which, by the way, is not like a match to her portraits just yet, right? It's a very rough version of it. So answering the question from yesterday, how far we go with the model before we start projecting, right? And you saw like that my model is not close to finish or anything like that. And, you know, it's like the likeness is not quite there just yet. But at this point here, if it's close enough, you can start projecting, you know, and then finish the job before you start doing any HD projection. But so just a year a little bit closer to what it was in there. And I'm gonna move on to some other area already. So just gonna smooth it out, bring it out a little bit here. So your topology obviously is gonna be different from my topology here. And for this area here, remember I mentioned that the cheeks are probably like the places, the cheeks and the chin and forehead are the places you're gonna be seeing the pores the most, right? So let me just click this stronger, okay. So what I'm gonna be doing here, I'm just gonna be moving this stuff, but I'm gonna create another morph target, right? Because I wanna make sure that I'm actually correcting the edge flow. So I'm gonna just delete that morph target I had, delete, gonna store it again. Now I'm gonna just do a little bit of push and pulling here. So you see like there's a lot of, those polygons are pretty big in relation to those ones here, right? So I'm just gonna pull certain things here a little bit closer. So this area here has a little bit more of a compact number of polygons in there. Because I wanna make sure it's kind of like, you know, similar to what's around it. So it's not like I don't have those giant polygons anymore, especially because I have a star in there. So I'm just gonna do it like that, and then go to project, morph, click, drag, and release at the end. Now I have like a nicer topology in there, right? So let's do this with this area here as well. Let's make sure that they have like a better distribution, I guess. So let's do that. And then obviously I'm gonna start conforming to her own face and doing more of this again. So let's do that. Okay, so from this point on, let's start working around, let's say, the eyes. Just gonna go here. I'm gonna try to match the eyelids first. I'm using the topological move, right? So, and again, like my model is not like in a state that's, you know, it's like, oh my God, it's like super finished. I have to be so worried about those areas. No, I have plenty of room for mistaking here. And but the one thing that I want to see first is like this corner here. See, like in his case, because of the eyelid was so like it was an old guy's eyelid, right? So the eyelid is concealed underneath like this wall of skin that's sagging over it, right? So because she's a young person, I'm gonna have to actually obviously remove that. So I'm gonna just pull it up. If to do it more correctly, I can do this. Look. If you have in your topology, you know, it's like more like a circle. Your topology is following a circle around the eyelids. You can actually switch to the, you know, it's like you can press like W, E, or R, right? To switch to move, scale, or rotate. And then now you have the little gizmo. You can just click Control, then click around like this area and just like pull it, and you can actually select the whole loop, right? So I have the loop selected. I'm gonna just reverse it. So to invert the mask, just press Control and click outside of the model. Now it's inverted. If you don't want to see it, the mask, for any reason, you can always press Control H, so it hides the mask, but it's still there. So Control H hides it and hides it. I'm gonna keep it hidden for now. You just have to remember that's there. Otherwise, you're gonna be freaking out later on because you're trying to sculpt in one area and it's not working. So you can try that. So I'm gonna just pull this up and I'm gonna smooth it out. I want to make sure that the forms is going to start reading a little bit more, a little softer, right? If you're sculpting an older guy, fine. But if you're sculpting a younger person, all those forms have to be softer. So I'm going to just bring it up. I think her lids are actually, because she's squinting, they actually droop a little bit, but not much. So that's just to clean that area out a little bit. And now I eliminated the mask, just like control and then open a little window outside like that. Just eliminate the mask. And then I'm gonna smooth out this fold. And the corner here is an interesting one because you see, like in his case, it's going all the way down there. And that's not very correct anatomically, right? The corner is normally, it ends with a round shape. So instead of like a sharp shape in there, I'm gonna have to have a round one because it's like a membrane, right? Like the eyelid, the eyeball is actually pressing against this membrane here and creating the distortion of the eyelids. But like when you get to the very corner here, it's actually round if you look closely. So it's kind of like it has a little round shape right there. So I'm just gonna try to keep it a little bit like that, especially with her, since she's young. I cannot hide that under like a, you know, it's like a fold like this. In his case, I could just like, okay, it's hidden there, don't need to worry about it. But in her case, this is gonna be a clean shape. I'm gonna make sure that that reads round at the very end. So, okay, so that's clean. So let's move back here and let's look at her face. You can always use like your transparency if you want, but you know, in my case here, I have it with the wireframes visible, so it's easier for me to just see what's going on there. I'm gonna bring it up and close enough. Up. And again, I mean, like this is her eyelids are just like sketched at this point. So it's not like I need to actually reproject them to look at, you know, it's like make a perfect reprojection, because I mean, the eyelids are working fine. I just had to move stuff around because it came from another model. But if they're close enough, I can take from that point on and just sculpt, you know, instead of like being too concerned about projecting. For example, right here, you see like I pull that area of the caruncula all the way back, right? But this one is an indication that the caruncula is in the correct spot. Normally that's the shape that happens. It comes forward like that, right? So if I try to match what I have for her, it's not gonna look natural. So I might actually mask out that area in not projected and use whatever I have from the model here as well. If you don't have that in your model, in your base mesh, then obviously you're gonna have to try to match whatever you have in there. But yeah. So let's do this, and then you see that this line here is kind of wobbly, right? So it's going in and out of that. I had this, you know, it's like sometimes I'm not too concerned about it, and then I simply like go with it, and I just like do the sculpture, and then, you know, it's like go for it without being too concerned about it. For production, obviously, you have to be very careful about this line following like a, you know, it's like the loops falling correctly, because you want to make sure that it deforms correctly, especially if you're sculpting blinks and things like that, right? And in our case here, although it's a portrait, so we are not going to be animating it, we still have to deal with the fact that we're going to have like eyelashes placed into the polygons, on top of the polygons later on. So if you can have a line that's cleaner, that always helps to, you know, like select those faces and actually add the XGen right there. We're going to be working with XGen Interactive, not the core, and it's quite buggy. It's incredibly powerful, you know, and that's the thing that sucks about it, because it's so close to be a perfect solution, you know, and it's just like the bugs just like kill the experience completely. But hopefully we're going to be a little bit more lucky with this model here. You never know what's going to happen, but it's almost like it's almost guaranteed that we're going to get some crashes when we start dealing with the XGen. But the trouble is worth it at the end, I think. So we're going to be dealing with it. But there are some channels on YouTube. You can find lots of tutorials with the core as well. So if you by any chance you're getting too many crashes with the interactive later on, you can always look for the core tutorials and then find stuff in there that actually can, okay, I can actually groom my hair without using the interactive stuff, you know, because it's totally possible to use the old way of doing it. Just that the interactive is so much more artistic, you know. It's like you have basically like you're styling hair. You're not like simply like sculpting a few curves. You can use the curves. Obviously, we're going to be using curves to start the styling. But then after that, it's basically like you can select and freeze chunks of hair and then just style on the fly. You know, it's like basically like it's almost like a sculpture. You know, you're just like dealing with the sculpture. So the eyes are pretty okay in there. So let's see the eye bags. I use a lot of the, you know, it's like pressing Alt and just like dragging it. So it goes like basically moves with the normals, right? So like in the direction of the normals. So there's a lot of that. So we're gonna do that. Bring this one out. So always with the Alt, and then just like clicking and dragging. And then we can start like with bigger areas as well. So for example, like if I don't want to spend too much time just now with the eyes, let's start projecting something of some of the bigger forms. Let's bring this one closer to her surface here. So we have it there. Something like that. And then the nose. Let's bring it closer to her surface. See how different the model is? It's very different. That's the challenge, right? Now with the Z wrapper, apparently you would be able to do this like very few clicks, I would say. And based on the tutorials I've seen, it seems like it's like black magic. It looks amazing. But in our case here, we are not using it, so we're gonna have to learn to do the hard way. I think it's important to actually learn things like the hard way, because you never know if you're gonna have certain tools available, you know, and then instead of like getting stuck, you know, you're gonna have more work, but at least you can get stuff done, you know, and that's important. For the nostril here, we're gonna have to find out what's the shape. Let's bring it closer to this and then up. Smooth out a little bit. And so that's kind of like close here, but the nose is always like a tricky one to do the projection, because if you don't have like right on the dot, sometimes you get some funky stuff, you know, depending on the distance you have set for the projection. You can shoot from the inside of the nose to outside, and then you get like a very messy result. You're gonna have to clean up a lot of stuff. But for example, in this case here, what we can do, we can isolate a few things. So one thing I'm gonna show you of this model here is that I have like those polygroups already set, right? So there is one polygroup that I believe is inside of the nostril. So I can always like lock it and then project everything around it and then unlock and then just do like the blending between them. So in this case here, just gonna bring it out a little bit. And that's the important thing about keeping your model symmetrical at this point, right? Because you can get a lot of stuff done very fast. And then even with later with the projection of the, actually the sculpting of the HD geometry, is gonna be important to have everything symmetrical first. So it's gonna do like kind of like roughly here. Let's start with maybe like a big mask. Let's see if it can snap all together. So let's start with masking this entire area. Oops, not this one. Mask pen. Let's try this entire thing here first. All the way here. And I can actually increase the distance for the projection, just to make sure I get the entire thing. Let's try here as well. Let's see how far we can get from the surface or how close. Let's try this entire thing. Oh, you see I have like a problem in the back in there. We can fix later. So let's try to invert the mask and go to project all. And let's see how messy this is gonna be. So the distance by default is 0.02. So let's see what we get. So see, like not too close, right? Still have plenty of room in there. But let's try with a little bit of a bigger distance. So let's try 0.05. Now I got the fairly decent projection in there, right? So it's going pretty far from what I had, but I mean, that's expected, right? I was pretty far. So let's keep doing the same thing. So turn off, oops, this one, transparency. So I'm gonna go to the neck in here. First, I'm gonna obviously try to match the shoulders closer to what I had before. So I'm gonna pull this entire thing here down and really force it. It's not time to be precious about anything right now. It's just like, you have to solve the problem. So you just go, bring everything down. There. I'm gonna make sure that I have this border here correct. Same for this. If it's a little bit on the thick side in there, you can always use an inflate to actually get this around it. And then it should project correctly if you have like an inflate around there. So let's try to inflate this area here a little bit just to get this around it. Maybe I don't need it. Let's see. Seems like it's close enough. Let's try like that. The neck looks amazing. Huh? The neck looks incredible. Let's try that. A little closer. Smooth this area. Smooth the entire thing. Closer, closer. There. Smooth it out. Let's try. Actually, make my smooth a little stronger, like that. Okay, so it's good enough. So let's try that. So let's select with lasso. So get the best lasso. I'm pressing Control, so Control, click on it. And then let's just lasso around here, this entire area, and see, invert the mask, and then see how much we can get of that. That's pretty good. Like not the bottom here. The bottom got a little funky. Let's try. Let me just bring this one a little closer. I think in this case here, I might actually use just a smaller intensity, a smaller distance, and then just like fix on the fly. So let's try to bring this closer here. Looks like it's fairly distant still. Let's try with like 0.3, 0.03, oops, 0.3. That. Let's try project all again. So that's a little closer now to what I want. Needs a little cleanup here. Gonna just smooth it out. Good, like that too. That, smoothing it out. This area here as well. And then not only smoothing out, but obviously doing a little move with my Alt. So let's go closer to the surface. It's pretty deep in there, so. Actually here I have to be careful. And if you're having trouble, for example, if you're moving stuff and is affecting the opposite side, you can always mask the back face, right? So you can just go, for example, if I'm using move topological, go to your brush, and then you can just scroll down to modifiers. And then under modifiers, you have, actually not modifiers, is, let's see, auto masking. So auto masking, and then just press back face mask. So in this case here, now I can move stuff at will and it's not gonna affect the back face. So let's do that. And then let's see what we have in there. So the neck, I can get much closer by just moving this whole thing. Then once we have like a fairly decent projection, we're gonna be just smoothing it out again, and then doing that trick about you know, getting things closer to the edge flow we want, and then using the morph target to fix it for us. So it's gonna do that, that, here closer too. Let's see this area here. Let's try to project again. How is that part doing? Looks okay-ish. Looks a little flat. Let's see. Yeah, I got a little flat in there, but you know what? Even if it is flat, I kind of don't care, because I mean, I'm going to be sculpting. This is just a sketch anyway, but I can use a little bit of inflate here just to make sure. Use a low intensity, like 3, so I can control it better. I'm just going to inflate this to go really over it, and then smooth it out again. Inflate just there. Smooth it out. It's too much. Let's get the move brush. Let's try to project this thing. Yeah, that's much better. So the neck is almost completely resolved. The head is already resolved. We have all the way to the forehead. So we can start like going to the most delicate parts now. So I'm gonna have to start with try to get the chin a little bit closer to the position we want. And again, like my model already had an open mouth, right? So it's not like I'm gonna have to model. I already have a pocket in there. But if your model didn't, you can still do the projection here and then later play with you know, it's like the building the topology for the inside of the mouth, right? In this case here, it's actually pretty close to what she had before. I'm gonna just turn off the back face mask from the topological now, because at this point here I don't need it. It might actually be counterproductive for me to have it on. So just gonna bring it down, not too much. And then the thickness of the lips, it has to have a, you have to have like a decent amount of meat in there, right? If you make it too thin, there's a couple of things that are going to happen. For example, like your subsurface scattering might not behave correctly, you know, depending on how much you're using of it. And then it just doesn't look natural, you know. It's like you have to have enough volume for the lips, especially like with women, right? Like very lush lips. So let's see, let's get this. This, so kind of like close to the line I have. If I hide it, basically this one. So I have a pocket in there, right? So I don't need to worry about what's inside because I have that pocket already built in. But again, if you're sculpting from scratch, then this would be an opportunity to actually just project the outer parts. And then from that edge and on, you would basically just extrude, for example, in Maya, right? And create the pocket manually. But in this case here, I'm reusing a previous base mesh, which is basically like you have the base mesh I give you guys. If you don't have anything to start with, you can start with that one. But like I said, it's basically a zero mesh model, so it's not like ideal topology at all. But it's something, you know, to help. But if you have a better base mesh, by all means, do it. Or you can actually start with that one and clean it up, you know, so I can get a nicer topology in there. Especially for the ears, there's a lot of wasted polygons in the ears in there. Like zero mesher calculated that way, added a lot of stuff in the ears, but it can be optimized, obviously. So I'm gonna get this one closer to the corner. The corner is gonna be a tricky one, right? So I'm gonna bring, with a big brush, so I'm gonna just use a big one, because I want the topology to follow, almost like a facial expression happening, right? So I don't want things pinching too much. So like a broad brush just to help with that. And then let's get the nasolabial. I'm gonna have to actually nail it. Try to do as close as possible because I want the topology to follow it perfectly. If not perfectly, really close to it. And smooth it out, this entire thing, until I can feel the chin right there. We found the chin. Same with this area. Same with this area here. And the ears, again, I'm probably gonna be using good part of the ears I had before. Just want like a ballpark for the size of them. Then here, let's try again. Smooth it out. Always with Alt and moving towards the direction of the normal. Let's go here. It's manual work, you know, but I mean, at the end of the day, if I wasn't talking, yapping in my mouth like I always do, I probably would do this quite fast, you know. But I think like maybe like 45 minutes, 1 hour, you can do that and get it done, you know. It's just part of the most boring process, I suppose. But then things should look better after that. At least we have a topology to play with, you know. That's an important step. And like I said before, I mean, like a lot of you guys have like daily jobs, right? Like sometimes you get wiped at home, especially after a day of traffic, you know, it's like getting stuck in traffic and stuff. So instead of like doing the boring stuff, for example, if your topology can wait a little bit and you're tired today, you know, it's like just do something else, but just don't stop, you know. I think the thing that I always do, and I tell people, you know, it's there is no such thing as being inspired. You know, it's like, of course, like you can get inspired by seeing other people's work and everything, but like waiting for inspiration to be able to do any work, you know, that's kind of like it's a BS that we tell ourselves. So we can just like bypass that and not work, you know. It's kind of like, oh man, I gotta rest, you know. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not inspired today. that's BS. You can get stuff done. You know, it's like I think it's just like it comes with a work ethic, right? Basically, like you have to get stuff done. Just make a list. You know, it's like if you have lighting that you need to do, and you have like topology you need to do, and have the UVs you have to do, and all the stuff. Just make a list and go from like the stuff you hate the most to the stuff that you hate the least. And then if you're too tired, just do the stuff that you hate the least. You know, just do the easy stuff and get that stuff done, and wait for a day that you're a little bit more rested, right? And do it again. And as long as you keep like producing, you know, so you keep your brain active, and keep a project going. You know, it's like it's important to be able to keep up with projects. You know, so yeah, I have a big project going on at work right now, and it's actually exciting for me. Like I'm having fun with that, and but it's a completely different feeling. You know, it's like to do my own stuff. So I get home and I just know I have to get stuff done, especially with the class now. It's a way to force myself to get stuff done, you know. So I get more work out, and it makes me feel good, you know. It's like and sharing information with you guys and all that stuff. So it's good for the soul, and it's good for you as a part of the therapy, right? You're basically like most of the people in this industry are all introverts, right? Like I'm a big introvert, but the thing is like. This is kind of like my comfort zone, you know. It's like I like doing this stuff, and the experience about like teaching live, it's new to me, and I'm really appreciating it. You know, it's like I like the interaction with the students, and it's cool. You know, it's like, but maybe my yapping nonstop is part of my disguise, because I'm always like, oh man, I'm being observed. You know, all those talented dudes out there, and just like looking at what I'm doing, and maybe like seeing my mistakes and things like that. So there's a lot that goes in the back of my head, you know, but I keep going. So let's see. Get this stuff closer. That's the nasal labial right there. And then this one here is going to be the tricky one to find, or maybe not so tricky. Let's see. I think we're going to find pretty fast. And I can only use the trick with the morph target to get this stuff really good. Let's try to project this stuff here and see what we get. Let's see. The top lips need some adjustment though. Step closer. Yeah, the arc is in here is not like perfect, but I'm gonna be dealing with it later during the sculpting process. But I'm gonna try to get like the maximum amount of detail within the outside of the pocket in here for the mouth, right? So I'm gonna try to project this entire thing. Let's get this pocket here, the nasolabial, a little bit closer to what we have in the sculpture. And probably around here, I'm gonna have to change direction a little bit. So let's try to bring those guys closer. And this guy's here a little bit further. See how much of that projection we can get. Let's start with the top of the nose. Oops. Let's start with this whole area here. So let's see how much we can get of this. So this, we probably already project a good chunk of it. Then maybe the bag here. Not the carancula though. I want that preserved. Unmask it. And then I'm gonna do the top of the nose. And probably the tip as well, but not too crazy about the nostrils just yet. Then this entire area here, the cheeks, and the top of the muzzle. Even here, but not the nostrils. Outside of the mouth. Then we can refine the lips later. And then the chin. The broad shape in there, this entire area. Here and there. So let's see how much of that I can get projected correctly. It's a big chunk, so might have some problems some places, but let's invert the mask and just do another project all. That's actually quite decent, but Yeah, like this area here, obviously, are gonna need some adjustments in there. Let's see what we have so far. So if I turn off her, it's not too bad, huh? It's getting there. So areas to resolve are basically like the most delicate now are the, it's like the eyelids, the lips, and the nose itself, the nostrils. But everything else, I mean, like if you're gonna reuse some of the ear stuff, right? I can start with this ear here, no problem, because it wasn't sculpted anyway. And so we should be able to get this soon. So let's see. Let's try to mesh those lips here. So I only have the external part. So I'm gonna try to project just into this line here. So basically like I'm gonna stop it right here. Do the lips, just the face of them in here, right? Basically like the little face of the lips here. And then all the way to the top. And then around there. And then here, just gonna get this area here as well projected. And hope for the best. The corners here might be tricky, so we're gonna try to project as well. So let's do invert mask, project again. That looks pretty decent. Let's see, this area here still can come a little closer. Oh, I have selection, sorry. Actually, I don't need to project. I think it's good enough because it's so close. Let's just select that area here. Invert, project. Yeah, that looks pretty close. So I think for the lips, I think we are kind of like in a good spot. So let's resolve the nose now, because that's a tricky one. Let's select this guy here. It's all good. And let's try to find out what's happening here. Okay, so that's Ray. Let's bring this one closer to this area. Okay, so I have the base of the nose here, and then let's try to figure out what's going on here. So I have this entire volume happening there, which might be a little bit too big. So I have the option here to actually try to project it, or just like use whatever is in my topology. So to avoid problem, I might use a little bit of that and just sculpt again. But let's see what we can get. Let's see here. So this little base here, maybe I can get a little closer, so get more topology in there to get the little fold. Let's see with the, yeah, try to get something a little bit more like that. And let's see what we have here. Maybe the tip and around here. I don't know how well the projection is going to work in those areas, but we can try. Let's try to select like this all the way to the tip, just the outside, and then this area here. And then keep the nostrils. Actually, let's select the border of the nostrils too. Let's see if it's going to do an okay, decent job or not. And then invert the mask, and let's do a project with 0.02. See, I got like some wacky stuff going on right at the edge right here, right? So what we can try, I don't know if it's going to work, but we can try to do a morph target here. Let's do a morph target, delete, store, and then we're going to use the project morph again to try to resolve this. So let's try to smooth it out. It's looking a little thin in there. Let's see if it's going to cross everything again if I do the projection trick. It might actually, because it got super thin in there. I might have to actually use an inflate. So let's try this. Yeah, didn't do much in there to resolve the problem for me. It actually crossed things a little bit further. But yeah, I'm gonna be basically like sculpting this by hand and making sure that I'm matching it closely. So let's just bring this up. And I'm gonna have, like I said, like maybe use a little bit of inflate brush to actually get this stuff a little bit less thin. little thicker in there. So yeah, well, I'm gonna be sculpting this to make sure that that was gonna work for me. And then for the nostrils, again, like I might project, but I might not, right? Because the nostrils, if I have them deep enough in there, that's just like, it's easy to simply, yeah, they're looking okay. Just do something like that. And kind of like consider the nose kind of done, but we're gonna be projecting a little bit of the higher res as well. I don't want to project just the super low res stuff. I'm just like trying to establish like a ballpark for all the forms before I go a little higher. And then when I go a little higher, then I'm gonna make sure that I have enough, you know, thickness around those forms. So I'm gonna just inflate a little bit there. So the nose is pretty close now. And then the last part is actually the eyelids. Let's just select this, deselect everything. And let's try to resolve that. So we're gonna do this again. I'm gonna just smooth this out just to get the topology to flow better. Around there. And make sure that this is like it's following a line. So again, like just make sure that I have a good spacing here and topology for the grooming of the eyelashes later. So it has to follow kind of like a perfect line in there, right? So let's bring this one down a little bit. And I'm not gonna project those, but if I needed to, I would, but it's just like to avoid headaches, since I already have a topology that's kind of working, I'm not gonna be stressing out about it. So same for this one, we're just bring it out a little bit. Smooth it out, bring it out a little bit. Smooth it out again, bring it out. And then that's kind of it. This whole thing here, once you have the eyeballs in place, like the final eyeballs, we're gonna be actually doing an extra good work with the you know, it's like the shape of the eyelids to actually go and wrap around the eyeball perfectly, because that's important, you know, it's like to have that feeling that there is something pressing against the skin, right? So you have the eyeball in there, you're gonna have your eye bags formed by the shape of the eyeball, right? It's kind of like an offset. You're talking about like layers of fat and other stuff in there, but the offset's gonna happen. So let's just do this, get closer to the skin. And then this entire area here now, I think I can actually project it. Let's just smooth out a little bit more here. I want to make sure that everything is soft when it comes to her, instead of like those harsh lines from the older dude. Let's get this a little softer. And then let's select this area here. Around there, and then a little bit of the eye bag again. Let's see what happens with this area if we project it. Let's see that, invert, project all. Yeah, I think it's good actually. The thing is, like, I don't have a lot of polygons, so I'm gonna go to a subdivision level higher than this. So I'm gonna go over 1. And I have 69,000 polys, maybe twice like that, because her sculpture, she has about like 600,000 polys right now, right? Actually 400,000. So like at 300,000, I should be able to capture a lot of it, but not perfect. But again, it's not like final model or anything, right? So we still have room to sculpt here. So let's see, for example, if I capture just the eyebrows, how much of that detail I can get, if it's enough for me to get an idea, because I'm gonna be eliminating the eyebrows anyway. So let's see, project all. Let's hide this guy here. Yeah, I'm gonna get a fairly good amount of detail. Actually, I could go a little bit further, I suppose. Let's go, just so I don't lose any detail, let's go over of the number I had originally. So I had 400, I'm gonna go to 1.1 million here. So at 1.1 million, I should be able to capture everything that was in there, or pretty close to everything. The topology is not the same, obviously, so you never know what's going to happen. But so let's get that. I have to be very careful with the eyelids, though. Let's do it with the tablet instead of the mouse. Kind of forget sometimes. See, transparency. Let's do it all the way here and around. Okay, and then let's do the same with this area here. Get just the lips. Oops. And the outside and the inner a little bit right here. Should be enough. Let's get that little thing. And then we're gonna be painting around there. And the nostrils, I think gonna try to preserve as well. So I'm gonna project probably around here and around. And then preserve anything that's not, which is a nostril, right? I'm gonna try to preserve whatever I had in there. So let's get this one a little bit more round. And we're getting there. It's gonna be over soon. So the torture is gonna be over. Let's do that. All right, so now it's gonna be easier to just select everything here. You can even use a little lasso here. Or, oops, sorry. Topology, okay. Let's get this one, little lasso. Let's get around maybe this entire area here. Down here, here. Something like that, and then just paint this. Did I get the year in there? Let's try to eliminate it. Should give me like a good starting point for my actual sculpture that's about to start. So even tonight, I'm probably gonna work on the likeness, but now finally using an actual topology, right? So that should be based like moving forward constantly now instead of like just doing a concept. Just gonna be doing like a forward motion. So now that I have everything selected, I'm gonna just add a little bit of blurriness to my mask. So I'm just gonna click, basically like gonna press Control, and then inside of any area with mask, you just click one time like that. So it's gonna create a little blur in the mask. And then I'm gonna invert it. Let's try to project and see what happens. Hoping for the best. Hope nothing explodes. Yeah, I got some artifacts in the back of the ear, and then the bottom here. We can fix it now. But for the face itself, I think it looks pretty good. So let's try, see what happens here. Yeah, it looks pretty nice. I mean, like the carunculus, gonna have to fix some of the fold in the top. Everything else looks okay, you know. It's like the nostrils. Yeah, a few things are gonna have to be fixing, but for the most part, it looks good. So let's just fix this stuff here. That since we are here, we want to get as close as possible without pain. Let's get this, go to a subdivision level less so I can actually smooth things faster. And turn on that one so I can actually see. This one is going to be closer to the surface now to project. This one I'm going to smooth out. Pretty good. And use topological to just move back. And smooth again. Same with this guy, topological, smooth. And I don't even, to tell you the truth, I don't even need to project anything in the bottom here. It's just like, it's BS, man. Don't project it. Don't waste time. So I'm gonna project this area here because that's somehow important, but not fully important either. So let's do project all. Okay. That's okay now. And then the back of the ear, that's the other spot that we had. So let's do that around here and here. Invert, project all. Yeah, I got a little bit of a depth in there, but again, I mean, like it was a concept anyway, so I could just smooth it so it looks nice, but without freaking out about it. Same with this, gonna make better transition here. That should give me a nice starting point for my actual sculpture. And let's see if nostrils are in a decent spot. Let's see, right here. Yeah, because of the projection, I kind of like missing a few spots in there. You're just gonna smooth it for now. Looks fairly decent. So I think like at this point here, other than, yeah, some of the eyelids as well. Let's get that a little bit more of a fix. So now the next step is to actually make sure that our edge flow is okay. So let's deal with that, and then we are kind of done with it. You know, it's like it didn't take too long, I suppose. Let's see what time that is. Oh, it's you guys are. I forgot about the questions and answers. So you guys are free to talk. I mean, there is not a lot going on here in this class, but please, by all means, like even if it's not related to the class of today, just feel free to ask. The time passed fast, man. So let's get this going on.
Hi, Chris.
Yes.
So I have a question related to the UDMs. So are you gonna use the same UDMs of the base mesh, or are you gonna like do another?
Yeah, so the UDMs I have in the mesh that I gave to you guys, those ones are just specific for that mesh. In my case here, I'm gonna be opening it. I'm gonna show you the UDMs I have right now. So you can actually see, I have like one less. So basically, like instead of 6 that you guys have, in that model, I have 5 in this one here, and I can show you exactly how it looks like. But I rather open in Maya because you can see things better in there than in ZBrush.
Okay.
Yeah, but let's see. Yeah, this is the, in the highest resolution, I still get some artifacts in there, so I can just smooth it out. And this is my highest resolution. So basically, when I subdivided it here, you notice that I stopped at 1.1 million, right? I could have gone further than that, but why I didn't go further is because of the HD geometry, right? HD geometry, in my experience, it's not ideal if you go over 2 million polygons. I know that the Pixelogic, they say like, don't go over 1 million polygons, but 2 million polygons is completely fine. And the way that HD works, I don't know exactly the voodoo magic behind it, but I believe like it stores like in a virtual space, for example, in terms of, like maps, you know. So you have all this information stored in maps, whatever type of maps those are, I'm not sure. And then when you switch to HD mode, it actually loads those maps, applies to the model, and goes from there. So the theory is that like if you have a model in non-HD geometry, right, and you subdivide this mesh a couple of times, and now you're exporting maps, if you pass like 2 million polygons, you're gonna notice like that's gonna start dragging, and then the exporting the map is gonna be much slower. But if you do that, for example, in combination with HD, just reading the maps from this virtual space, everything becomes super fast. That's why I'm able to export like 5 8K maps from this model here in the future, complete HD geometry, in about 6 to 8 minutes, right? Instead of like spending, let's say like 3 hours doing the same job if you didn't have HD geometry, right? So, and bear in mind that we're using like maximum settings for everything, right? So you're maximizing the DP subpix in the exporter, all that stuff. So let's do this. Yeah, this is another thing we can actually do today. You know, it's like, for example, we can start by assembling our scene, and I can show you already the displacement exporting settings, and you guys can have those things in the back of your head already. So when you start doing the displacement, you can actually use those settings I'm going to be passing. So I can do this today actually, and then we have, yes.
Question about the UDMs.
Mm-hmm.
Is one reason why you're like, because you're using a lot of them. With that, is that one reason why you're staying in ZBrush primarily? Just because you're iterating fast, you can do everything at once within ZBrush and then just exporting it back out to Maya for renders?
Yes.
It's just like okay. Cool.
It's really to speed things up, and the number of the UDIMs is necessary in my case here because oh look, I got some artifacts inside in there. Oh great. It's necessary because of it's like I need to accommodate like all those polygons that are going to come from ZBrush. So if I have like 72 million polygons in this case here, I have to have enough UDIMs to accommodate all those polygons. If I have just like one single map, is not going to have enough information to reproduce all those polygons.
So like smashing it on like an 8K map just doesn't do the trick?
No, not at all. Because
Got
like
it.
I said, like all the calculation I did the other day was about that. It's like, for example, 8K map is like basically like a 8K times 8K, right? So that's basically like 64 million polygons worth of detail. But that's if you're using like 100% of the UDIM, which is never the case. You're always going to use like, I don't know, like 30 to 50% in a good day of the UDIM space. So in that case, you're basically like getting at 32 million polygons in there, right? So to recreate like what I have in terms of the detail in here, let's 70 something million polygons, you're gonna need at least 3 UDIMs completely, like very optimized, I would say,
All right, cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so I always keep like between 4 and 5. In your case there I have like 6, just to make sure you have enough room to really accommodate all the polygons, because it's important that you do like all this work and put all the pores in place. And then if you just slap one simple map in there, it's just really not going to do the trick. Oh, look, this one is actually part of the eye bag in there. So it's going to be easier to actually smooth that out. Let's try that. And then you can do our first export of the displacements here and test it in Maya. So I can show you the Arnold settings and all that stuff. And then from that point on, the settings going to be always the same. It's just going to be iterating. So let's try this. And so maybe I can hide. I'm actually going to hide the back of the eye bags here. Not the bags, but the pockets. I'm going to hide the back so I can see what's inside. And look at that. I got some artifacts in there. In the first class when I was teaching, I actually used the sphere. And I actually use the eyeballs to project back manually all these forms in here to conform it perfectly. So like the edge was perfectly conformed to it and everything else as well. But in this case here, it's faster if you just like don't care too much about the intersections inside other than the border itself. So the border, we're going to have to make sure that it's a perfect match. But then the other stuff here, I'm not going to be, like trying to fix everything because it's kind of like you waste a lot of time with that. And again, like if it was an animation or something like that, we would be more concerned about that. But at the same time, some people don't even build the pockets, It's like sometimes they just keep a hole in here. And basically like as long as you have the edge here folding over and until a certain point in here, the subsurface scattering is not gonna go as deep to the point that's gonna reveal something here, You should stop in a good spot. So I would not be too concerned, especially with portraits, right? But this area here, like this border, you're definitely going to have a perfect match later on against the eyeball because we need to feel that little tightness between the membrane and the eyeball itself. So now it's a little cleaner in there. And let's see. Oh, I did like in a lower res. So let's see if it's going to explode in the higher res. No, actually it's behaving pretty well. So that's good. So now let's talk about displacement since we have this now, and it's actually a model that we have multiple levels, right? Let's try to do our first export to Maya and talk about the render settings and everything. Because if you do anything over the weekend, although you're probably not going to be doing a lot of sculpting because we're going to sculpt in HD, right? But I can just tell you exactly how this is going to play out. So in this case here, we can just export actually, you know what? Since we're going to be using HD anyway, so at this point here, let's try to add some levels in HD and get this model kind of like ready to go. Actually, no, let's not do this because I'm going to bring this model and I'm going to replace the HD in another model. Actually, I can do both. I can do the subdivision here so you know how it works, and I can also do the replacement of the head I have inside of a scene already with HD geometry. So I'm gonna start by saving my file, obviously, because at this point I didn't save it. Let's save this one, and that's gonna be under Jessica, and then ZBrush, ZSketch 9. Actually, this one's gonna be Jessica Reprojected 1. Just change the name a little bit. And yeah, so I'm gonna be showing just as an example how to okay, so let's do a couple of things here. So let's go back to the lowest subdivision level. Actually, let's keep it 1.1 for now. Just bear with me. I'm gonna be repeating it again, so there's no doubt about it. But just for now, I'm gonna keep it 1.1 million polygons. Gonna export this mesh, okay? And this is gonna be called Jess Retopo, and I'm gonna call it 6. Jess Retopo 6. I'm actually gonna put like head Retopo 6. And then I'm gonna export next the teeth. The teeth is already exported, so I already know the position for them. So I'm not gonna be exporting again. So just the head. So this is just like for my own information here, because I want to import this one into a scene with HD geometry already. But for the purpose of the class itself, let's pretend we didn't have any scene with HD just yet. So let's pretend this is just your model. You started your model, you did this projection here into your new topology, right? So you're basically like in the same state that I have in here. So what you're gonna do at this point here to start HD geometry, first off, don't forget this number, right? If you subdivided your mesh, make sure it doesn't pass 2 million polygons. So if I hit like 1.1, that means if I subdivide once more, it's gonna go to 4.4, right? And definitely out of bounds for us. So I'm gonna stop right here. So I'm gonna go to HD, Geometry HD. So click that tab. And this is where you add the subdivisions for HD geometry. The thing is, like, it doesn't show you visually in here because it's basically like just creating this intention, right, for the HD, creating this space, virtual space for where you're going to be storing all the information you're going to be sculpting HD. But at first, it doesn't have anything. It's kind of like those empty maps in the limbo, right? So you're going to notice this. For example, if your interface doesn't show this, like the active points, you can always try different interfaces, like by using this, you know, until you find one that actually shows them. So this one doesn't have it in there, right? So this one here has it. So, you know, we can find an interface that actually shows, because that's important. And then I'm gonna just pay attention to those numbers, okay? So I have 1.1 million polygons for the current mesh and 2.8 for all meshes combined for the other subtools, right? So all combined are gonna have 2.8. So 2.8 and the active points are 1.1. So I have a total here of basically like 4 million polygons, right? So I could just have to discount that from the polygons, the total amount of polygons at the end. So let's go to Geometry HD. You're gonna click the Divide HD. You're gonna see this number changing, okay, the total points. So I'm gonna click one time. So now it's 6 million polygons. And then 2 times, now it's 19 million polygons. And then 3 times, now it's 72 million polygons. So that means that around like 2 million polygons is from the rest of the stuff, right? I don't remember what's the number. I think it was like 2 million polygons. So that means that my HD geometry is about 70 million. At this point here, you could potentially subdivide one more time, and you would reach like 280 million polygons, something like that. But just bear in mind that if you have 280 million polygons, that's just for the face and the shoulders, right? And ZBrush cannot sculpt more than, let's say, like 40 million polygons at a time when you enter HD geometry mode. So that means like if you have 280, probably ZBrush is gonna have just like you're gonna give you just a little chunk of geometry to sculpt on, instead of like giving you an entire face, for example, right? So I'd rather stop right here around 72. But if you plan your model correctly, you can get more than that. You can get between, like I said, let's say 80, 85 to 100 would be pretty much like a sweet spot for this type of model. But in my case here, I mean, like, because my topology is pretty good around the cheeks and those areas, I can get a lot of detail just with the 72 million polygons. So you see, like, nothing shows HD geometry just yet. So if I try to add anything here, for example, I'm gonna go to my pores in here. Let's try pore intro, let's see, single pore, this one here. So if I try to add a pore in here, although I already subdivided HD, it's not an HD just yet, right? So a pore here is gonna show like pretty badly, right? I call those pores buttholes. It's a scientific name for them because they look like a little bit. So so here, and it's funny because all my students the past 2 class years, when they comment on the threads, they just like, oh, this is the butthole I sculpted. So at this point here, there are 2 ways to see the HD formation, which you don't have any, right? Which is basically like you're gonna press, you're just like gonna rest your mouse outside of the model, you're gonna press A, right? And it's gonna generate a preview for you. So that's basically the HD geometry now, which is basically the same because, like I said, I didn't sculpt anything, right? But to enter HD geometry and finally start sculpting in HD, you have to always press A when your mouse is resting on top of the model. But the trick here is you want to make sure that you tell ZBrush what area you're actually favoring to do the sculpting, right? So basically, I'm going to go to my lowest resolution here again. And then I'm going to just make sure I have polygroups. So my polygroups are there, right? And then those are the polygroups for the UVs, but I think they're not broke down completely. So if you have like auto groups, you get this. If you get UV groups, you get that. And if you have auto groups with UV, then it breaks down further because it's basically like the UV group is going to consider the UDIM itself. So each one of those colors is going to be one UDIM, right? But the auto groups with the UV is like every single little island inside of the UDIM is going to have that, right? Oh, one thing I forgot to do here before we start the whole shebang with you know, the projection there is actually I have to actually slide those edges just to match that. We're going to do this with that morph trick, right? But just going back here to HD, just so you know, we don't miss the thread. So if I go and I select, for example, one of those areas and I keep it visible, now it's easier for me to just like, you know, I can hide things like that. And then actually use the mask to sculpt things. So I'm gonna select the lips and even the nostrils, in this case here, eye bags and the caruncula area. And then everything else for me is less important. So if I have something like that, I'm just gonna go to the highest resolution again. And then around this area here close to the nose, I'm gonna press A. The thing is, like, when you're using HD, if you enter HD mode by pressing A, right? With the front view like that, ZBrush creates this virtual cylinder and projects like almost like it's a circle that goes across the model, right? And sometimes you get smaller areas. If you go from the side, then the circle tries to capture most of the face, right? In the case of the neck here, I don't even need it, so I'm gonna just hide it. And maybe even the back of the head. So let's just deal with the mask itself, right? So if I have something like that, now if I press A around here, around this area here, cheeks and between cheeks and nose, I'm gonna press A and it's gonna enter HD geometry mode. And let's see how many polygons we can get in there. So I got 27 million polygons out of the 70 million polygons I had before. And then if you click, for example, the solo only shows you what's HD. And if you uncheck solo, it's gonna see like what's not HD is in a different color. And those areas are locked, so you cannot sculpt in there, right? You can only sculpt the lighter color. And then now, remember we tried to add a little pore, right? And then it didn't work, but look at this now. So now we have all this awesome, you know, it's like awesome amount of polygons in there. And like I said, if you go really close, you're gonna see a little bit of the, you know, it's like the little polygons in there. But this is like, man, you have to be really close. And like I said, the stuff we're gonna be doing with the render settings, not the render settings, the map exporting settings, it's gonna smooth out a lot of this stuff. So don't even worry about it. So I'm just gonna undo it now because I wanna go back to where I was before, just like to smooth out those edges, right? And then proceed by bringing this model here and replacing the base mesh of my scene that has HD already. And I think that's important because at some point, for example, if you go through the whole trouble of sculpting something with all the pores, you should be able to transfer this, right, to some other model. So that's why I'm going to be doing this now. So you can actually do this in your own pipeline. You know, it's like you can, that way you can have like a base for your models like very fast, especially like if you have a female and a male and like an older guy with different types of skin, you can always reuse stuff, right? To get out of HD geometry is the same deal. You just press A and you should get out of that. So it's going to calculate everything, bake everything that you just did. In this case here, I didn't do much, right? And then you should go back to the you know, the regular subdivision levels. At this level here, you can actually go back in resolution, sculpt things, and fix your primary forms. You know, go a little higher, do some work in the secondary forms. You know, and then go all the way up and keep working the tertiary. So at this point, you have access to all the levels, and that's how I work. You know, it's like I keep working on primary, secondary, and tertiary all the way to the end of the project, but never like trying to finish one and moving to the next one. It's always like all kind of packed together. So now I have my model with 1.1 million polygons, and I'm going to be using that trick, the morph target. So I'm going to do this, just store, and then I'm going to move some of those edges so I get like a cleaner projection, so I can actually go and start doing some work in my actual scene. Just going to do this, try to get closer to the topology of it. Let's try that and see what happens. Hopefully it's not too heavy for it. Yeah, it's okay. It's a little bit heavy, but not terrible. Just gonna bring this one and then maybe bring this one down slightly right here and up and smooth it. Let's use the strong smooth. So like intensity, like cranked. Really get this area very smooth. And then same for this area of the lid. I want to make sure that everything is following the line as close as possible. So I'm going to just bring this area a little higher. So the line is a little bit more continuous there. And let me check the top one as well, because you're going to be growing lids and lashes in there. It looks pretty good. It's going around okay. And then let's get this one like that. So that little edge in there, that should work fine. And then let's bring this little edge down a little bit. It's like not a lot of precision at this point, like just enough to get stuff to look correct. Let's try the project again. Okay, so now it looks good. And then this model here is ready to go to the next scene, which is the scene I have already with HD, right? But the scene I have with HD, we're gonna be basically like eliminating everything because we want to start everything from scratch. So I don't you know, cheat on you guys. So let's do this. Let's export this one again as my, see, I'm exporting at 1.1 million polygons, right? So I'm gonna do this. Actually going to rename this one retopo. I'm going to put HR. So HR is for high resolution. So I'm going to do this. I normally do like LR, MR, and HR. So I'm going to do this 7. So I know it's a high resolution mesh that's coming in. And let's just wrap this one. So let's save this file and then open my latest file from Ray. And we can do an export of those maps, you know, so you can get all the settings, and so you're kind of ready to go for when we start doing the displacement stuff. But at least I can hook you guys up with that. So let's see, File, Save As, ZBrush, and then reproject it too, so we don't lose any of the work we just did. This file should be a little bit bigger. Let's see what's the size right now. It's not by much. I mean, like it doubled the size, right? But because those maps in this virtual space, they're completely empty. There's no displacement being, anything sculpted in there. It's still a very small file, right? But as soon as you start adding more and more stuff to those maps, you're gonna notice that this number is gonna start growing. So now I have the model in here. Let's open my scene with the array, and I'm gonna replace the model in there. So let's go to personal array. So that's basically like a simulation, right? Like as if you have your own model that you did in the past, and you wanna just like bring things up and replace the base mesh. So that's how I approach it. So, as in this case here, obviously I'm not reusing any of the texture that comes from his face, but I'm gonna definitely reuse some of the specular maps and things like that, right? Because they're already painted. And I'm gonna be showing you guys how I painted using the same techniques and everything. And you're gonna see, I showed you guys yesterday, like they're super simple looking. It's mostly like spray painting. But at least I don't need to do the whole thing every time. And that's an important part, It's like, that's why I can crank those models so fast, because I already have some maps already painted, right? And so I'm gonna be showing obviously how I paint and how they look like, but it's like I'm not gonna paint the model, the maps from scratch, other than the albedo, which is the color map. That's gonna be painted from scratch. But specular maps and the least important stuff, not so much. So I can actually bypass that part. So look at that guy, has eyes. This eye is weird. So let's do some work here. She's not gonna be wearing a suit, so I'm gonna be starting by removing this stuff. Let's delete the tie, shirt, suit, tongue I'm gonna preserve, teeth I'm gonna preserve. Actually, the teeth I'm gonna bring from someone else because his teeth is pretty fucked up. So it's not like I'm gonna add this teeth to my wife. It's not gonna work very well. And then the eyes, like it's a little creepy with the eyes, and there's just keep. Oh, it's even creepier now. Huh? It's like a zombie. So so for example, like in this case here, the top level is at the same level, right? There's the same number of polygons, so it's 1.1 million polygons. But he has HD in there. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just go to let's go to my import. I'm gonna import the mesh I just saved from her. So like Jessica, right here. And then I'm gonna go to OBJ, and I have my retopo HR. I'm gonna open it. If we are lucky, we should replace it, and the face is gonna shift, gonna go down, right? Like that. The color is gonna still be there. All the painting is gonna be pretty creepy, right? Because using the old man skin. So we're gonna be painting over, so we're gonna remove all that color. And then just for the purpose of having a reference for the teeth, I'm just gonna bring the teeth as well. So I'm gonna click the Poly Mesh 3D, the star, import, and then I'm gonna bring the teeth lower. I'm gonna click the star again, import the upper, star again, import the eye reference that I have. And the eye reference, you see, like it was frozen in Maya with the groups. So this one came reversed. So if you have something like this, if you're just like bringing for reference anyway, you can just hide the one that's good. I'm gonna hide that one. So Control, Shift, and Alt, just open a little window. And then you just go all the way down here to your display properties, and you just say flip. And since you're here, you can just click double as well. So it's always double. So that fixes it. And now I can actually, it's like Control D just to add some more resolution in there. And now let's assemble the whole thing. So I have her facing here, and I'm gonna just bring append. Gonna append the teeth lower first, append teeth upper, append eye reference, right? Like I said, like the teeth itself, I'm not gonna be dealing with this because I'm gonna reuse some teeth that is a little bit more of a neutral side of things, right? The one I sculpted originally. So I can just like remove it all together. It's good that you can keep like your scene as clean as possible because all this stuff obviously is gonna add a lot of memory that you're gonna need to use, right? So I'm gonna delete the teeth and this one as well. Caruncula, I might keep it in there. Probably, yeah, just for the sake of having the color. And then for the other guy, so I don't need hair, obviously. So I'm gonna just remove the hair. And you know that ZBrush now has folders, right? You can always create a folder and just add stuff into there. I'm kind of like still not used to it, but it's super simple to use. So let's do delete, delete, and then this eyes delete as well. So for this guy here, this is my spec map that I showed you guys yesterday, right? So I'm gonna go to the resolution 1.1 million again, and I'm gonna just import her again. And then obviously, as I do different passes to improve the topology, I can always export and then re-import it back. So I'm just gonna import this one. So it should pop back down there. So now I have this guy here, right? So she has the specular map already kind of ready to go. Obviously, it's going to be a different type of skin, so I'm going to have to repaint stuff, but at least it's a good starting point. It's not something from scratch. Then 1.1 million on this guy, import as well. And the reason why I exported in 1.1 million is because I was trying to capture most of the detail I put in my sketch, right? So that's why. But you know, since I'm bringing here, look at that. If I render her with this type of hair in here, she would have like a salt and pepper hair. So that's not gonna be a map I can reuse. For example, I'm gonna have to repaint this one entirely. So, but this one here is the bump height, and the bump height is basically like uses the T-zone for the most part. So this is the type of map that I can actually reuse and as a good starting point, you know. That's why sometimes I get like my models like super fast on Instagram. Like I start a model, let's say Friday night, and then on Sunday I already post something with the full set of textures in there. It's because I'm reusing stuff, you know. Try to do it in a smart way, right? So the model is from scratch, the detail is from scratch later on. But like those maps, I mean, like super easy to just have them available. And then for the tongue, I'm just gonna keep it hidden for now. So now I have the model in here, and obviously, if I go up in resolution, you're gonna start seeing all the HD geometry from the old guy, right? So if I just click this one, and I press a review in here, preview, sorry, not a review. Oh, look what's gonna happen. She's gonna look weird. Yeah, not too terrible, huh? It's kind of like smooth it out quite a bit. So I got a lot of stuff for free in here that I could use potentially as a starting point. But again, she's a very different character, right? So I'm gonna be just eliminating this stuff. So let's do that by going to HD first. It's gonna go to select my masks, polygroups. Select the nostril, the eye bag, and the caruncula area, and the lips. And that's about it. So we're gonna start by cleaning up this area here. And this time I'm not gonna be hiding anything on the back of the head. Let's see how many polygons you get, because last time you got only 27 million, but I believe we can get more polygons if I keep everything visible like that. Let's try again, like around here, so I can get at least the eye and the nose within the mask. So it's gonna give me 35 million now instead of like 27, so that's good. So it got me this entire area that I can actually smooth out now. So this is all HD, right? And I got a couple of brushes I'm gonna teach you guys how to make those little brushes for the pimples in there and blackheads. But to eliminate this stuff and to smooth things out, in the past I would just go to like one subdivision level less than this or two, and then smooth, and then go to the highest level and smooth again and again, right? But then someone, I don't remember who it was, like last class, suggested to use like the smooth stronger instead, and just like crank it to 100, and then you can actually smooth out a lot of that stuff, like without having to do layer by layer or level by level. So I'm gonna start by doing this. Still, I think like, let's try, I think I'm gonna go faster if I go one subdivision level less and smoothing here. Yeah, that's gonna be much faster. So just gonna eliminate all this detail. So when we start sculpting in HD next week, just pretend that this stuff was never here. But it was important to show you guys that's in there, because if you're planning to actually build a model in HD, that's going to be the base for your next models. For example, you can have, like I said, a female and a male, like different types of skin, you know, like as separate models. Then instead of like having to reinvent the wheel every time, you can just like work smart, you know, so I can have more fun sculpting the likeness and things like that, but without having to paint all those maps every time, you know. Now, when it comes to the pores themselves, each person is going to have a very different set. And then it's your choice, you know. It's like if you want to basically like reuse stuff for the very same skin, or actually be more custom, you know. It's like I can actually sculpt stuff by hand every time. I try to sculpt stuff by hand every time, you know. Even if it's not like a full-on pore by pore, at least like an array of pores to help me with speed. But it's a different set every time. So even though I'm in the subdivision level like 1 before the highest one, I still can, if I go back to the highest one, I think I'm not going to see a lot of stuff. Let's see how much we're going to see if I go back in there. But I want to make sure that we don't have detail. I don't want to pollute this thing. And then since we're going to have this done here, we can at least export a set of maps and show you how to plug them. I think we have enough time. Let's see. It's 11, 10, 20 minutes. I think we can crank it. I think we can actually do a lot in this time. So 20 minutes, basically like we're going to spend basically like 6 to 8 minutes just to export the maps. And then the rest of the time we're going to have to actually plug them and show you the settings. So let's try that, because if you start fast here, we finish fast too. Let's see. Okay, so now we have everything clean, right? So not a lot of extra detail in there. So that's going to be a base for our sculpting next week. And today probably going to be sculpting just the base mesh. You know, it's like resolving some of the primary and secondary forms a little better. But this is a good starting for us. So I'm going to go out of HD, pressing A. And let's do something here. And let's talk about the settings for exporting everything correctly to Maya. Oh, look at that. I noticed this happening before as well. You enter HD and then when you get out, you get this artifact in here. Maybe it would be a better idea if I just started fresh, to tell you the truth, you know. So let's go back here. And this is the known HD model.
Wait, Chris.
Yes.
So I have a question. What's Geometry HD do for? I've never used that before.
Oh, you never used? Yeah, it's just so you can sculpt, like in theory, instead of like sculpting a maximum of like 30 million polygons in one model, right?
Yeah.
You can sculpt like up to 1 billion polygons.
Oh, I see.
So, but I never went like higher than 250 million polygons. So that's what I use for a full body character, for example.
Mm.
HD is just like for super high detail stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
So you saw what I did here before, guys. I actually tried to just like eliminate the HD stuff that was already baked in there. And in this case here, because it's so different between his skin and her skin, I got some artifacts when I got out of HD. So what I'm going to do, let's start fresh, just like you would do with your model. So I'm going to duplicate this model. And when you duplicate a model that has HD in there, you're not going to get the HD anymore. So basically, like, it's going to eliminate the HD. So that's the only way you have to actually, you know, eliminate is by duplicating the mesh. So I'm going to duplicate it. So now I have number 8, and the number 7 is the one with HD. So you're going to see here in the number, I have 102 million polygons, right? So I'm going to delete this one. And now it came down to 31, which is basically HD for it. Not the HD, but the combination of subdivision for everything else. So I'm going to do the HD geometry here, just like you would do. You subdivide your mesh all the way to 1-point-something million polygons. HD, I'm going to subdivide again. So 1, 2, 3. So now I'm back to 101 million polygons. So that should have my 70 million polygons just for the head, right? So let's export some maps in here. So let's say you're going to start the process of exporting maps to go to Maya, and the process is going to be exactly the same every time from this point on. So we're going to just assemble this as a scene in Maya we can actually iterate on. So the first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna go to the lowest resolution of your model. Let's say like this, you spend like a good chunk of time is sculpting in HD here, right? You already added all the fine pores and everything, and then you get out of HD, and now you want to export a matching model that you can render like one-to-one in Maya. So what you're gonna do here, you're gonna just go to the lowest resolution. You're gonna export this mesh, and I'm gonna call it LR, so low resolution 9. And I'm gonna do this as well. I'm gonna go one subdivision level higher than this, so this one, that's 69,000 polys in my case, and I'm gonna export this one as well. So this is gonna be the MR, so this is the medium resolution, and the other one, LR, the low resolution one, right? So export the lowest resolution, and then one subdivision level more than that. Gonna go back to the lowest level, and this is important here. I said this at the summit as well, if you guys watched, but I need to do this process every time. It was something that Ofer told me to do it, and it works, because you want to make sure that you have like a one-to-one translation to the, you know, to the render. So I'm gonna delete any morph target I have, and I'm gonna do this in 3 steps. It goes like this. You're gonna go to store, click switch, nothing happens, but don't do anything other than that, and then you go to import. So store, switch, import, and then I'm gonna get my low resolution. Nothing's gonna change, but the thing is like this now, it's basically like saved as a buffer in ZBrush. So anything that happens over this level of subdivision is gonna be calculated in relation to this level here, right? So that means you're gonna get like just the super fine forms exported as displacement map instead of like too much of the medium forms, right? It's gonna try to do its best to calculate just the super fine stuff. So I'm gonna go to Z plugin, go to multi-map exporter, and then the settings I use for the multi-map exporter are those. So I'm gonna use map that's 8K. By default, you have this slider around here, but you can always crank it manually since you don't have a preset in here, and then it's gonna lock at 8K, so 8192. I don't change the map border, so it's like 4. This is important because I'm doing the switch morph target here. Remember, I clicked that one. That's why now we have to click the switch morph target here. So he actually reverts that at when he's exporting the maps, and exports just the difference that I was talking about. So that's an important step. And then this is where it looks a little bit confusing, but it's gonna make sense. Because you see, like, instead of like exporting by default at subdivision level 1, that's gonna be just like this subdivision level I have here, right? I'm exporting the displacement maps from subdivision level 2 and up. And I'm doing this because I have the model. Remember, I saved a low resolution and a medium resolution. So the medium resolution is level 2. I do this because I like having a model that's slightly more dense in Maya, so I can actually do a better job with interactive grooming with XGen later on. So if you have a model that's already kind of high res in the base mesh, you don't need to do this. But in my case, I have a very low resolution mesh, like that's 17,000 polys, right? Which is nothing. So that's why I use like a subdivision level 2. So in that case, instead of like exporting this mesh here to Maya, I'm gonna export the medium resolution one, the one that has one subdivision more. And then for the rest of the settings, I have adaptive, DP subpix at maximum 4. This one by default is 0.5 here. And I normally bring it back to 0 because that's how Arnold works as default. And what does that, this means is that at 0.5, the mid level is gray. So it's like 50% gray. And then basically like the displacement is gonna be calculated up and down, right? So you're gonna get like the highest points in white, the lowest points in black. And if you have 0, it starts at black already. So how is it possible it's going to be below 0, right? It's because we are working like with 32 bits, which is float. So, you know, it's like you have negative values as well. And that's how Arnold works. So if you keep at 0, you should have like, you don't need to do anything in Arnold other than just plug in your maps and kind of being ready to go. And then I don't use any colors. So it's just like black and white and then 32 bits and the XR. So if you want to screenshot later when you're watching the videos, that's basically the settings I have, right? Now, before I export this mesh for the first time, I'm just gonna check the name of the subtooling here because that's gonna affect the name of the maps I'm exporting. So in this case here, I can just like temporarily rename it, and I can just call like a displacement or just like Jazz this map, something like that, something that's descriptive, and then go back in here, and I'm gonna export my map. So let's see how long this is gonna take. And while this is processing, we can go back to ZBrush. So when I'm exporting my maps, I'm always pointing to source images. Remember, like all those folders were created by Maya when we set up the project, right? That project window. So like you create this folder called source images. That's the default image folder that Maya searches for stuff. So that's why I always save in there. So it's gonna create this map EXR. So I'm gonna save it in there. And then since we are here, let's go back to our Maya. And let's talk about a little bit about the shaders here. So I have that shader, that's just the regular clay shader, right? And then you're gonna notice if you're gonna play with things here in Maya, first thing I'm gonna do, let's bring the actual model. So let's, first off, I'm gonna bring this window here, which is the hypershade. You can access using that little sphere in there, right? Or if you go to window and then rendering editors and then hypershade, so it's the same shortcut. And then you're gonna bring your shaders in here. And then I'm just gonna make sure that I have the mesh selected, and I'm gonna click graph and then graph materials on selected objects. Just make sure I have the right thing selected. So I can actually assign the same mesh when I bring back the actual mesh I'm gonna be using for rendering from now on, right? So I'm gonna bring file, import, make sure that you have that little detail on, right? So it has to be single object at every time. So this one you just have to set one time, and then if you do like a save settings in here, then it should be saved forever, or until you have to update everything. So let's see, personal projects. Let's go to Jessica, and then OBJ. And we're gonna bring the medium resolution, not the highest, not the lowest, because that's the one we're exporting the displacement maps from, right? So medium resolution from level 2. So this one. So now this is the mesh I'm gonna be using from now on for all my renders. From this point on, that's exactly the mesh I'm gonna be using. I'm gonna just be using morph targets or blend shapes when I bring the new iterations, and then just morphing into the new one and always keep the same mesh. So I'm gonna assign that clay NSP, and now we have our scene with our actual mesh in place to be used from now on, right? So let's set up a couple of things here before we can render anything while ZBrush is working for us. First off, like by default, when you bring something for ZBrush, it's all kind of like faceted like that. It's an option to keep it like that because when you have the displacement is in the subdivision in Catmull-Clark, you should eliminate that at render time. But if you want to have like more appealing visually, you can just click on it, and you can just go to your modeling, go to mesh display, and then you just click soften edge, and that should smooth out everything. So now we have everything clean. And then let's click the object itself. If it doesn't pop in here, just press Control A. Oops, what did I do? I pressed Control S as well. So Control A. And then you're gonna go to your, me and my chubby fingers. You're gonna go to the second tab in here, and then gonna go to Arnold. And that's basically like the place where we are setting things up yesterday, right? We talked about like using the shared SSS in here. So we have that set. And now we're gonna finally actually change things here for good. We just talked about changing, but we didn't do anything. So today, since we're gonna be plugging those displacements, let's do this. So we're gonna go to Catmull-Clark. Gonna add like 3 iterations to start. Probably gonna end up using 4 when I have the fine detail in there from displacement. But 3 should be okay for now. And then I'm gonna switch from raster to OBJ. And I'm gonna switch from UV smoothing from pin corners to completely linear because I'm not smoothing anything in ZBrush. It's always better to me because it's not the easiest thing, because if you're using Photoshop to paint, obviously you're not painting like a smooth map. But because I paint everything inside of ZBrush, I kind of don't care. And then that saves me time with fixing seams and stuff like that. You know, it's like a linear UV probably is not going to give you any seams. And then if you go to auto bump, you can just click this one here if you want. In this case here, we don't have the fine pores or anything, so it shouldn't affect anyway. But and then for the height, that's 1. Remember, like we were talking about the 0 value, right? If you had that at 0.5, I believe this one, if you set it to 0.5, it's gonna match that one. But this is basically the default, so I just bring from ZBrush to match it. And then that's basically what we need to set for the model itself, right? So let's talk about the shaders in here. Let's see if ZBrush already finished. Still doing it? Okay, cool. Probably not that far. So let's talk about the shaders. So we have our hyper shader here. And then, so we have the clay red NSP right now, right? So let's just click the shader itself, go to graph and then input and output. So it actually just frames it for you. And you see I don't have anything like too strong when it comes to subsurface scattering. I probably have a little bit in here. So for example, the subsurface in here in the tab, in the attributes, right? Control A to access it. So I have the subsurface in here, but it's like halfway, right? Because this is a clay shader. I have like halfway, it's 0.5. So that means like the subsurface is being mixed with the diffuse channel. So basically, like if I have a diffuse channel in here, but instead of using 1 for the weight for the subsurface, that means it's mixing the subsurface channel with the diffuse channel. But in our case, because it's going to be dealing with skin, I tend to actually crank the subsurface all the way to 1 here. If you want to try some presets in Arnold, it's pretty cool that you have this little button here. So if you click this button, you're going to see there's a bunch of presets for like types of materials. There's clay, right? Probably very different from my own clay, but yeah, I never opened that one, but probably very different. But and then when you go to skin, you have some presets as well. So if you click skin and you go to replace, now you get like this skin preset already. It's like ready to go to render something, but the scale is pretty funky, right? So we have 1 for scale. Let's try to do a render with that and see what kind of result we get. Let's try open this guy here. And let's see what we get with that default skin shader, which is, again, very different from the skin shader I use, which we're going to be talking about probably next week. Let's see. It takes a little time here because, remember, I added 3 subdivision levels for the model. So it's actually calculating and creating a higher resolution mesh at the render time. And then ZBrush actually finished exporting all the maps. So he exported 5 8K maps in 6.28 seconds in my machine. So let's just save this entire scene here so we don't lose it. It's gonna be like, let's just put like full scene 1. This one has the HD, so it should take a little bit longer to save. Has the HD, it also has all the subtools here for the other maps we're gonna be using. Don't worry about the stuff here because next week we're gonna be talking, is it next week? Textures, I don't remember, it's next week or maybe the other one after. But we're gonna be talking about all this stuff more into detail, so don't worry too much for now. But you see, like, it looks like a candle right now, right? And I don't understand this because we did the model, we created it in real world scale. So I think the preset, they could do some better work in terms of like setting something that's like more world scale that would work for a person, for example, right? My personal approach for scale, I use about like 0.1, between 0.120 to 150. So I'm gonna keep it, like say like an average 0.14. And I'm using random walk 2. If you don't have access to random walk 2, you're gonna have to go to the Arnold website, and then it's gonna point you to the Autodesk area. What's the name of it? Area something. Autodesk area, and then there you're gonna have the links to download the latest Arnold and the latest Arnold is 3.21. 321. This one has the random walk too. That's the new like the how you call it, the new engine for creating skin, right? Like it's much more interesting, not only for skin, for any type of subsurface, but it's very subtle difference, but it looks better. So I would update that. And then for the this control here basically controls if you're gonna go negative, it's more back scattering. If you go positive, it's more front scattering. So I normally feel, I have a better feel for my skin when I sculpt my models and render if I have a little bit more of front scatter, so like 0.1, something like that. So let's try that with this character now. Let's save and see the difference. So store snapshot. And then let's render again. Started to get a little bit better now. It's like it's not so scattery anymore, but the skin is very pale, right? Because I'm using this color here. So if I bring it down a little bit, I can actually bring it down, the default color, and then it should start looking a little bit more like skin. And that's just like a quick start for you guys if you want to play with the skin. But obviously, I'm going to be passing my own set of parameters for the skin that has a lot to do with specular maps and things like that. So we're going to be populating this entire thing. But just like for you to play over the weekend or something like that, using those settings here should give you like a ballpark close to what I use for my renders. And then obviously just play with those values in there. So let's get the maps plugged in here.
Chris.
Yes.
What do you think of Al Surface Shader? Arnold used to have that.
Yeah, I used to use it before. You know, it's like before we had this new shader. And it worked great. I mean, like it was super cool. It was done by the someone at Weta, I believe, right? He programmed it.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. And then when Arnold kind of like incorporated the entire thing into this Uber shader, some people complained because they didn't have all the controls and anything. But you know what? Like I always like the way that they translated because it got simpler and the results are really good. You know, it's like I really like the results. And in much less controls, obviously, but just with a few slides, you can get like very realistic stuff if you plug the right maps in place, you know. So I really like it. I know some people hated it when they changed, but yeah, but I really like it. The simplicity to me is always cool.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna be plugging now the displacement maps we just exported. Let's look at the, I know we're kind of running out of time here, but I'm gonna speed up a little bit so at least I don't leave you guys hanging over the weekend. So modeling editors, gonna go to my UV editor. And just to remind you guys, I have like 5 view dims, right? I have half of the face, and I have like shoulder, and then the bottom part, and some big ears in here. So I get more detail in the ears. And that's about it for the map. So I should get like a correspondent displacement map. So let's go to let's move this one away, to my Hypershade. And so I have now, let's grab this one again. And I have my clay red NSP that I can just rename here at this point to skin, right? Because it's gonna be skin anyway. Or even better than that, I could just do like a jazz skin. And let's plug the displacement map here. So to plug the displacement, you see there's this node in here, that's top node. If you click on it, not the shader itself, but the stop node, you have displacement material in here. So I'm gonna just click on it and pick the file. And it should open here for me. Gonna expand this little arrow in here. So displacement, click the little arrow. And now I can actually select the map, right? Gonna turn off any filtering. So gonna go off in here. And then let's just go to this one here. I have more options. And then, but it's basically the same thing. Gonna go down here. Under Arnold, gonna turn off my auto-generate TX textures. I explained why yesterday, because my computer can handle it. If you're having trouble, you can actually keep it on. But just remember to flush the caches if you're keeping it on. And I'm gonna just select my maps here. So the way it works is, let's go to Jessica here. Then source images, where we saved it. So we have our first set of maps, and then they are 8K maps, so they're pretty big, 155 megabytes each. And you can click any one of them. So pick one of them randomly. And then the trick here is actually to tell Mari Mari, to tell Maya to actually use Mari UDIMs, right? So that's what we're gonna do it here. Before I go further, let me just go back to ZBrush for a second. I forgot to tell you this thing here. So when you export the maps, those are all the settings you have. But there's another setting here under file names that you have to set up first, which is basically like keep those ones at TIFF, and then this is optional if you want to overwrite, but make sure that this one is UDIM. To change it, you just keep clicking on it. By default, I think it starts with this format, or maybe this one. So if you keep clicking on it until you switch to UDIM, that's the type of map we're going to be exporting, okay? Because we want to make sure that everything is Mari format. So now I switched to Mari, and I got...
TIFF is not really that... I mean, TIFF is kind of big, right? What about the PNG?
What do you mean?
TIFF format is kind of big compared to PNG. Why don't you use PNG?
Oh no, but here's the thing: like if I'm exporting like color maps, I can either export like can be like PNG or it can be TIFF, right? Yeah. But since I'm exporting EXR, this is for the displacement, and I have that button EXR on, right? Like if I go here, see like EXR, it's gonna force to export every time in EXR. This is just for the displacement.
Oh, last time I see it, TIFF in your displacement.
But that's
displacement setting.
Yeah, but this is just for the color maps, 16-bit and 8-bit formats.
I see.
Right. This one is a 32-bit map, so it's going to be forced to XR here. If I turn it off, then yeah, it's going to export in TIFF. But if I have on, it's going to be always XR. And then you saw that now it searched and found 5 different maps like here. So that's what I want, right? So now this is plugged in there. And since we already have all the settings for this mesh here that we just set up, right? Like the Catmull Clark and all that stuff. Now this render here, at this point, I should be able to get like displacement maps applied. But the thing is like, we don't have any detail, right? We just like, export like empty maps at this point, but at least it's hooked up to the shader. So next time I do, for example, like any detail on the surface now, I can export the maps again. Again, in my machine is going to be 6.5 minutes, 7 minutes, and then just re-import them in here, and I'm ready to go for a new iteration, you know? So that way it's super fast for you to iterate with your models. You can just like, you know, it's like do a session of sculpting, like let's say like an hour and a half, 2 hours of sculpting, just send the maps back here, just plug the new map, and you're ready to go, you know? So I think that's kind of it for today, guys. I think we covered a good ground because I was expecting to actually spend most of the class just projecting stuff. But thank God we had some time to actually talk about exporting settings and importing settings in here as well. So feel free to play with the skin shader stuff, like not skin shader, but I mean like play with the subsurface that I just showed you guys. But don't worry about the skin shader itself because, like I said, like I normally share like all the settings, so you're gonna get all that stuff, you know. So thank you so much for the first week, guys, and hope to see some of your progress in the group. And I'm going to be commenting the next day. So, yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great one.